Hello there, happy Saturday, and welcome to this week's market wrap and stocks to watch video for the week of July 3rd, 2017. I'm Tim from AlphaWolfTrading.com, and if you like what I do here, if you've made money off of stocks I've highlighted from past videos, I'm going to ask you to do me a small favor and please retweet this video or share it with others that you think might find it interesting. I would appreciate that in helping get the word out about Alpha Wolf Trading. And so let's go ahead and get right into. Listen, also, if you're new to watching the video, make sure that you go to alphawolftrading.com and sign up to have the stocks to watch videos sent directly to your email each and every week. All right, let me go ahead and get started here. We've got a lot to go over, like I said. So first thing, I'm going to start out with this little Bitcoin thing. I did a pre-market prep on Friday video. Said, my homework assignment this weekend was kind of take a look at some of these Bitcoin stocks because they do have some interesting looking setups on a daily time frame, and there has been a lot of chatter about Bitcoin. And I can honestly say this. If you play these things, play them strictly as day trades. I was going to look up some fundamentals. There are no fundamentals. These are very high risk speculative names. They do have an interesting looking technical pattern. However, these are pure lottery tickets. And if you're going to play them, you play them as such, right? So you play it size appropriate. Not to say that these things can't get a pop and get a nice run. Don't go in too hard and heavy, and make sure that you have a detailed trade plan. Know your risk reward in these things. But yeah, very speculative stuff here. So that behind us, let's move on to the next item on the list, and let's take a look at what we've got coming up for next week. Now listen, next week is a shortened holiday week. We've got half a day on Monday, and then we've got Tuesday off. But this is not a week that does not have potential market moving catalysts on the horizon. We've got PMI manufacturing on Monday. We've got ISM manufacturing, construction spending. We've got Fed speak on Wednesday. We have the FOMC minutes. We've got mortgage applications and factory orders. And we've got more Fed speak, right? We've got jobless claims, ADP employment report, international trade, more Fed speak, ISM non-manufacturing. And then on Friday, we have a monetary policy report to Congress, which could be pretty interesting. That could be impactful for the financials. We'll see what happens. Then we, of course, have the jobs number on Friday, which is a big deal. And then we've got Baker Hughes rig count as well, which we actually just saw a decline for the first time in like 7 weeks or something to that effect. So a lot going on next week. It could be actually, from an economic data standpoint, could be an interesting week ahead. So keep that in mind. We're going to take a look at some sectors. I'm not going to go through them all like I do typically for the members at the end of each day. But I am going to highlight a few indexes that are worth keeping an eye on. Right? So the NASDAQ holding on to the 50 EMA, actually closed below the 50 SMA. NASDAQ looking guilty until proven innocent. Same thing with the SMH. Seeing some weakness there. Also with Robo and bots. A couple of ETFs that I am keeping an eye on for a potential starter position for my long-term hold portfolio. Seeing some weakness there as well. SMH closed below the 50-day. Currently looking, like I said about the NASDAQ, guilty till proven innocent. It is, however, right at an area for potential bounce, this trend line here. Now, you could see a bounce. Watch the volume. If it's a low volume bounce with no conviction, could be just little dead cat bounce sucker rally to try and draw some people in. I think you still need to be pretty careful here. We break this trend line, that becomes problematic for semiconductors. S&P 500, pulled back, tested the 50-day moving average, got a little bit of a bounce. There are some sectors out there that still look pretty darn strong. IYT is looking pretty good. Let's take a look at that real quick. Hold on a second here. So that's the transportation sector, looking pretty good, right? Consolidating over a rising 50-day moving average, flirting with an area of price resistance. If we can take that out, I think you could see some positive action within that space. IWM consolidating. I think we need to keep an eye on that, and as long as we can maintain above the 50-day moving average, I think this is pretty healthy action. The IBB. So one of the things that we had been focusing on at Alpha Wolf Trading, after we broke over the 300 mark, got out of the upper Bollinger Band, we wanted to see a nice, healthy pullback, consolidation as we work our way back into the Bollinger Band, potentially coming down and retesting this 300 area, which was acting as resistance. Now we see if it acts as support, that could be a great place for us to see a bounce in the IBB. Aerospace defense looks pretty good. We're going to take a look at that real quick. Oil has been grinding higher, so we'll take, now it's up several days in a row, right? Coming up into the 50-day moving average. Now we could find some resistance there. There's also resistance at the $10 mark, where there was acting as support, now likely to act as resistance. Overbought, so it wouldn't be a big shocker if we were to see maybe a stall in oil. Let's take a look at aerospace defense. Nice big pop, consolidation, pull back to the 50-day moving average. Seems to have found support there. Little bit of a bounce, testing this trend line. We'll see if we can take that trend line out, maybe get a little follow through. Home builders actually looking pretty good. Same scenario. Pull back to the 50-day, held the support, pulled back to that trend line, held the support. Now testing this little short-term trend line, see if we can take that out. The dollar, right, pierced the lower Bollinger Band. Now this could just work its way back in and build out a little bear flag and then break lower. But the dollar looking fairly weak. We'll see what it does next week with all the Fed talk. A lot of concern that the Fed is, not that they're changing the monetary policy globally, and you're going to be fighting the Fed, and things aren't going to be like they've been for the last 8 years. And maybe that's the case. I don't know. We'll see what happens. We'll see what the Fed speak is next week. But worth keeping an eye on the dollar. One thing I did find interesting here is URA. Uranium has had a nice little pop, consolidating after this breakout here into a nice little flag pattern. Nice tight consolidation just below the 50-day moving average. It may need more time to consolidate, but potentially look for a breakout over this trend line and maybe go up and get a $14 test is what I'm looking at here. 1389, 1390, that's up into the 100 EMA and an area of price resistance. It's got a nice little pattern on the daily. Worth keeping an eye on URA. Another sector that I really didn't see any stocks within the space doing my scans, but TAN is also looking pretty darn good. Big run up and consolidating, working its way back into the Bollinger Band. look for a $20 breakout. It might need more time to consolidate, work off this overbought condition. Just do that through time, not price. And this is actually pretty impressive looking as well. Healthcare XLV is another one, very similar to the IBB. Very healthy looking pullback here. We'll see if this winds up taking out this trend line. It might need a little more time to consolidate, but actually this is pretty nice looking as well. Okay, so for the most part, there are some sectors out there that actually still look pretty compelling, and we'll see what the market does next week. Could be an interesting week. Monday could be an interesting day for maybe some low floater names. Just a real quick take a look at last week's watch list. This was it. That little pot stock that had a really good looking setup on the daily actually broke out a little bit on Friday. Could see a red to green move there. Pretty big volume. See if it gets any follow through. NYMX had a nice pop this week. SELB, GNC. YTRA is interesting. Had a little bit of a pop. This is a really low float stock. Could get a little wacky. Worth keeping an eye on that. On a day like Monday, half day, stocks like that sometimes tend to get some action. So worth keeping an eye on that. But let's go ahead and get right into this week's stocks to watch. And we'll start with WEB. WEB, nice little volume pop on Friday after a pretty long consolidation period, right? Broke out over 24 with some conviction. This could potentially be a red to green type move. Maybe you get a pullback to 24.50 or so. Could see a tight consolidation here. Build out a flag. 25.55 actually is an area of price resistance on the longer time frame. So maybe we just see a tight consolidation and then a breakout, or we could see a drift back down to test this area of price support around $24. 39 million shares in the float, 5-6% short interest. Could be a day trading opportunity. Could be a potentially a swing opportunity on a pullback to support. Whatever you're comfortable with, but I think WEB is one worth keeping an eye on. AXGN, another one that had a nice consolidation period. Nice volume spike on Friday. I believe this is testing all-time highs. Let me make sure. All-time highs for AXGN. Piercing the upper Bollinger Band. Again, this could set up in a nice tight consolidation, nice tight pattern, or we could drift back down, maybe test 16 as support, and look at that as a place for it to bounce. Could be a day trade, could be a higher risk swing. 27 million shares in the float, fairly small float, but a nice little breakout on Friday. Look for potential continuation there. STKL, taking out the $10 holla. Stochastics have crossed to the upside. Another one that has been in a long consolidation period. And hold on one second. Okay, back to it. Sorry about that. STKL. So this has also had a nice consolidation period. Flirting with the $10 holler. Stochastics have turned up. Look for some volume on a potential breakout for STKL, and I'm not sure. No, actually, we've got some resistance overhead right around $11, and that could be a target to try and hit. But STKL, I think, is worth watching. And another one in the packaged food space is BETR. This was a recent IPO, and it does have an interesting look. Also, potentially looking at a 10 roll. It does have the 200-day moving average overhead at about $10.50, closed at $9.64. It's above a rising 50-day moving average. It's an interesting space to keep an eye on. This one's only got 21 million shares in the float and 52% short interest. So there's a possibility if that space heats up that maybe we see a bit of a pop in BETR. And I think Hain Celestial also had a pop on Friday. So this could be a sector worth keeping an eye on. There's a big gap to fill on the daily on this BETR. So I didn't actually have BETR on the list, but you might as well throw it on there and keep an eye on it. Let's see what else we've got here. NAO. Now, shippers, I have been on my radar for the last several weeks, actually, and they remain on my radar. There were some shipper names within my scans that caught my eye. A lot of them are in consolidation. I've got another one on this list, but this NAO has had a significant amount of insider buying. Another insider buy was just announced at, I think, $1.24 on Thursday by the insiders. They now have over 10% in the company. It had a little bit of a pop off that news on decent volume. Look for potential continuation, maybe a red to green move on this one. Pull back to, say, $1.20. See if that holds as support. Maybe you get a bounce. VUSI, very nice look on this one as well. Above the 50-day moving average, below the 200-day. Nice little consolidation pattern after a breakout. Got a little bit of a pop with some decent volume. Rumors, I think, of a positive note out from somebody. It does have the 200-day overhead as potential resistance, but I think it's worth keeping an eye on for a break over 670 with some conviction. Take out that 200-day. Maybe we get a break over $7 with some conviction. You get that. Maybe we get a target of... you're likely going to have some resistance around 725 or so, but it could actually go up and give us a close to an 8 test at around 775. So VUSI, I actually like several names in this space. VUSI is one of them, and we'll get to a couple of the others in a minute here. MANT, look, tech, not a great place to be. However, this had a nice little pop on Friday and closed over the $41 holla and above what was resistance, now acting as support. It is overbought. There's 22 million shares in the float, so it's a pretty small floater. Could see some follow through on this one. I think it's worth keeping an eye on. I'm not sure what created that pop on Friday, but it does have somewhat of an interesting look, maybe worth having on the radar. LQMT, so here's this week's penny stock. Last week was PNTV. This week, LQMT. Full disclosure, I have this stock. I own it. Got a little bit of a pop on Friday. Expecting, they've been building a new facility and expecting that new facility will open sometime in the near future. Expect some press there. Could get a nice little pop from that. Been insider buying at 25 cents. It's not overbought. Did get a little bit of a pop. Tried to take out this trend line. We'll see if maybe this has a red to green move and breaks out of its consolidation. But this is worth keeping on the radar as well. VSTM, 36 million shares in the float. Pull back to an area for a potential bounce. Got overbought. Been in a consolidation period. I think 205 could be an interesting spot to take it for a maybe a swing. Put your stop just below $2. Maybe even a day trade opportunity. You need to see some volume. but it is in an interesting area for a potential bounce. Look for it to take out that trend line and then maybe go up and test 250 as resistance once again. CBay been in consolidation as well, consolidating just below $6. Uh, Need to see some good volume here. This got 21.6 million shares in the float. Looking for a 6 test and roll. Probably more of a day trade opportunity on CBay than a swing. HC Wainwright had a $6 price target on it, so pretty close to hitting that target. This one is just a so-so for me. I think it's worth keeping an eye on, but just so-so. KOPN is another one with Vuzi in the AR VR space. I have played KOPN several times in the past. It's at an area of potential price support. If the sector heats up with Vuzi, KOPN could get some action. I think maybe you get a 4 test, take out 4. You could potentially go up and test somewhere around 450 once again. Likely going to have some resistance right there at around $4.30. That actually probably would be a real good target to scale out. But KOPN, I think, is worth keeping an eye on. CNBX, another pot play. This one is a biotech pot play. They did a capital raise about a month ago at $1 a share. It's sitting at about $1 a share. Just this one really, if the pot sector heats up, because we did see some action on Friday, Nevada, starting their recreational sales this weekend. If we do see the pot sector heat up, maybe this moves in sympathy. Could get a pop up into the 125 to 130 area. That's a pretty decent move for a stock that's sitting just under $1. Right? Look for some volume. This is a low float stock. Definitely do not chase it, but it has been consolidating after a nice little breakout, and see if we can get a $1 roll. It's oversold. See if there is a potential day trading opportunity there. ADMP. Now this is the generic EpiPen, had the big pop in consolidation. Ideally for me, an entry of about $4.50 would be ideal here, but it's been holding up in a pretty tight range. These candles are getting pretty tight. Look for some volume and a break over this trend line with conviction. I think you get a 6 test, maybe even go back up and test that somewhere in that $6.50 area. PIRS kind of had a little bit of a false breakout on Friday. Decent volume. It also has been in consolidation and had a nice little pop, but pulled back. Did manage to close right on top of this area of price resistance, right? So see if maybe we get a bounce off of that $5 area. It might need more time to consolidate, but PIRS actually has a pretty decent look to it as well. CO. This has been on my radar. They reported earnings, had a pretty decent earnings report, popped out of the upper Bollinger Band, took out this area of price resistance and consolidating, pulling back into the Bollinger Band, but holding above $9. So I think on a pullback to $9.20 or so could be an interesting spot to take it for potentially a higher risk trade. It's only got 39 million shares in or higher risk swing trade. It's only got 39 million shares in the float. Put your stop just below $9, right? And if it breaks out over the trend line with some conviction, potentially there's a day trade opportunity in there as well if you can catch it right. SIRI, Sirius. This is at a very interesting spot, $5.50. Potential flat top breakout. I would much rather buy Sirius on a pullback down to $4.75 or even down to $5. I think it becomes pretty interesting there. It's a very thick stock, 1.5 billion shares in the float, 16% short interest. Um, but if it takes out 550 with some conviction, maybe you get a test up to around 575, maybe even a $6 test. It's worth having on the radar. Just recognize that it's a very thick stock. It takes an awful lot to move it. And like I said, I prefer this one on a pullback to an area of support where it could maybe bounce, right? So $5, maybe even a pullback down to $5.16 or so, right around where the 50-day moving average is. That could be an interesting spot to take it for a swing. Salt is the other shipper that I have on this list. Nice little pop, broke over this little trend line here, consolidating just above these moving averages. Flagging out right here at about $7. It might need more time to flag out, but then look for it to take out $7.20. I think you get an 8 test potentially. A-Ray. So A-Ray also has a nice look. It's had a nice little breakout, and it's been consolidating. It might need more time to consolidate. It's consolidating below the 200-day moving average. This one maybe is more interesting at around $4.50, right? See if this appears to be holding as support, 450. Got some support back over here. That could be an interesting spot to take it for a swing. Put your stop, I guess, just below the 50-day moving average, maybe 425 or so. Risk 25 cents. Looking for it to take out $5, take out the 200-day. On a pullback to 450, you know, you're risking what, 25 cents to make 50 cents, 2 to 1. If you can go back, if you can get that 5 test, sell some there and then hold some for Lotto. See if it could take out the trend line and the 200-day with some conviction. POT. Now, this one is interesting only because it's bouncing off this little trend line here. I'm watching ag names. I have been watching ag names. It's at an area of potential price support, right? It's pulled back, and it seems to be holding in this area. See if maybe we get a break above this trend line, above these moving averages. This is a thick stock. It's a pretty thick stock. So it's probably more of a swing than a day trading opportunity. If it breaks below 16, you know, take it off the list. But I am still watching it. I still find it somewhat compelling. Eman is another ARVR play, right? This one is a very tiny floater, 20 million shares in the float. It's at an area of, you know, a cluster of moving averages. If the sector heats up, you need to see some volume though. This is traded 25,000 shares on Friday, so keep that in mind, right? You need to see some liquidity, you need to see some volume, but potentially could break out over this trend line and get a test back up into the 280, maybe even a $3 test on Eman if that sector heats up. KE, I found this on accident on Friday in the chat room. I was talking about, I was actually trying to type in Nike and pulled up this KE. This has actually got a pretty nice looking setup on the daily. 27 million shares in the float, fairly small float, and the fundamentals actually look pretty good on this stock as well. You know, it just, I mean, $19 is a big spot for it to try and get through. It's at an area of potential support around $18, right? Maybe just put the stop just below. I mean, this could be compelling on a pullback to the 50-day moving average, right? 1760 or so, you put your stop just below 17. You risk 50 cents. You're looking for this to take out 19, maybe get a test up to about $20. It does have a nice look. I mean, you've got a rising 50-day moving average. It's above all the moving averages, rising 200-day. Not a bad look on KE for an accidental find, worth keeping an eye on. AGEN, some insider buying in this area, had a nice big pop and has been in consolidation mode after the breakout. So uh, nearing oversold, nice tight consolidation, nice looking pattern on the daily, looking for a break over $4. If we can take out 4 with conviction, I think you get a test up to the 200 day around $4.35. Could be a day trade, could be, it's a biotech stock, right? High risk swing or potential day trade on a trend line break. OCLR, if there's a place for OCLR to bounce, it's getting pretty close to it, right? I think $9 is an interesting spot to take it for a potentially a swing. Just had an upgrade with the $14 price target. There's been speculation of a takeover or a buyout. There has been some interesting call activity going on in OCLR. It's worth keeping an eye on here. Potentially take it for a swing if you can get a $9 entry and put your stop maybe at $8.50 or so. Risk 50 cents. You're looking for it to go back up, test $11. You could wait for the actual confirmation and a break over 10. But OCLR has a pretty compelling look as well. Now this thing can be a little wild though. I mean, it has, it has some pretty wild movements in here. So if it breaks below the 50-day with conviction, it could come all the way down and test somewhere around the $8 holla. And that would be, for me, could be a very interesting spot to take it for a swing or even a long-term hold consideration. Quick. Now, semiconductors are not hot, so you are battling the sector. This had some news of a contract, got a big pop up into price resistance, pulling back, looking for it to hold support at around $1.40 at the 50-day moving average. Hold on one second. All right, sorry about that. So it's $1.40 could be an interesting area of potential price support. If it breaks through $1.40, let's look at this price support down here of right around $1.30, $1.32, which would also put us right around the 200-day moving average. That could be an interesting spot for potential support. Like I said, though, you're battling a sector. If the SMH breaks down, then this will be a much more challenging trade to try and play. So keep that in mind. Could be a day trade opportunity if it breaks over the trend line with conviction. Likely going to have some resistance somewhere around $1.70, but worth keeping an eye on just because of the pattern itself. And then lastly, I'm going to talk about casinos. So there was a report out this weekend that Macau numbers were up, or gaming was up like 26%, which is a pretty nice headline, right? Here's the issue. It was expected to be 30%. So it actually is a little bit of a disappointment. The other thing about this is that the casinos are now going to start coming up into tougher comparables as they move forward, right? So the casino sector has been very hot. MGM gapped down and broke down below and closed below the 50-day moving average on Friday, and I believe that was off of an article that maybe they had some bad luck in Las Vegas over this last month. So it's been a very hot sector, and it is, this MGM pulling back, and after those numbers in Macau, potentially we could see maybe a breakdown in some of these casino names. I like this sector for the long term. I like it for long term hold, and welcome an opportunity to buy these names on any kind of significant pullback. So, for example, if MGM were to pull back to $28, the 200-day moving average, I would look at that as an opportunity to add or start building a long-term hold position in MGM. And there's other names in the space. GDEN has a very good look to it. PENN also has a nice look to it. MLCO, Melco. All right, this has pulled back to the 50-day. Now this could bounce off of the 50-day and go back up and test $23.70, $24. It is oversold. But if it loses that 50-day, it could very easily come back down and test somewhere in this $19 range, maybe get down to the 200-day moving average. So a little bit of caution in casinos. We'll see how they open next week after that news release over the weekend. All right, actually got this under 45 minutes. It's pretty good, right? I hope you found the video useful. Like I said, if you did, please share it with others. I would appreciate it. And let's see what next week brings. It could be a very interesting week, even though it is a shortened trading week. All right, be careful out there. Have a plan. Know your risk reward and play size appropriate. All right? All right. Have a fantastic rest of your weekend. Have a wonderful 4th of July. Be safe. Have fun. And I'll see you all next week.